Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello, hello.
All right, the mic seems to be working over there. Alrighty then. So, all right. So let's see. Well, we're gonna wait a few minutes, so I guess we can just chit chat here.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, and well, no, there's nobody for you to introduce yourself to yet. But if you want, you can go ahead and share your link in the chat. Share any links you
yeah,
want. You want to just freebase it basically,
yeah. I'll
and
do it in a bit. I'm not sure when, but um, gotta get the link from somewhere or a link.
yeah, I mean,
Where do I wanna?
there we go.
I'll put that in. I gotta close that. I keep saying it, but I don't do it. Close my Fun My Comics. I'm almost done my remaster.
All right. Oh yeah. I think I told you the other day I got a new phone, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, had to get one there. All right, there we go. Now I think everything's caught up on that. All right, so of course we'll highlight the um.
Fun
Oh,
My Comic campaign for
all right.
Canadian Shield 2.
I'm gonna leave that up for a moment if you wanna, because I'm gonna go off camera here for a minute or so. So if you want to talk a little bit about I'll leave the link up there, leave it highlighted if you want to talk a little bit about your project and stuff like that while I'm away.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be right back.
Okie dokie. Well, hello everybody. How are you all tonight? I hope the evening finds you fine. Well, for my comics there, yeah, the Canadian Shield 2 campaign, I did have it over on Indiegogo. It funded over there. Um, but this was a second chance campaign, and well, didn't do real well. Oh well. Okay. Um, I'm remastering it, and hopefully soon, and very soon, I'll be able to. Well, that's remastered K one. So I don't know. I'm trying to talk. I'm just not sure what to talk about. Think about. Um. I know. I'll put a link to if anybody wants to join my Facebook group. Uh, so you can see some stuff for Cross Comics. There's you can read some bios, some scripts, all that sort of stuff under the file section. See what's coming in Cross Comics at some point.
So it looks like you put another link up there, Rick.
Yeah, to my Facebook group in case anybody wants to join. See, I was saying under the file section that there's some bios and scripts for characters that are to
It
come.
looks
And
like somebody else came in and liked and shared because I'm reading 4 here, technically
cool,
3
cool,
because
cool.
so at least somebody. So it looks like at least somebody's here. Just give me a second.
Ooh.
All right. So, anyways, all right, we're just, of course, just waiting for people to come in before we get started here. Hope everybody's
Yeah,
having a good time. As a bit of a reminder for everybody, of course, if you can help us out by liking and sharing the stream, seeing if we can get some more friendly people in here, that'd be appreciated. Also, if anything we talk about tonight grabs your attention, feel free to comment and or ask questions. We'll try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. So yeah, so anyways, it looks like StreamYard's being a little screwy here, not counting me as a viewer.
oh well. Who cares what StreamYard says? It's what YouTube says that matters.
YouTube's still counting only one. Do you have the YouTube screen open on your end or no?
Yeah,
All right. Well, it should probably be counting more. So, but at
says
least it's
one
still
watching
counting
now.
one. So,
Yeah. Uh, Sometimes I think if it stalls out or whatever, because mine wasn't up to date for the live. I put it to the.
from what I understand, like last night when we were all on Rex's stream, he had invited Doc on, and Doc was trying to share something, and StreamYard was giving him a bit of a headache. So, um,
Yeah,
trying to share his latest on his Pariah series, and um, all right, there we go. Now it's saying 2. So yeah, it's probably just delayed a little bit, but now at least it's saying 2 now. So,
yeah,
anyways, as I said, we're just waiting to see if more people show up here. We're already coming up on 8 minutes. Probably give it
yeah,
a couple. Probably just give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll just start talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. So, and as people come in, we'll probably get them caught up on everything.
yeah. You might need to start telling people half an hour before you actually start is your start time.
Well, I mean,
I
I
just joke.
well, I send out the link. I when I send you guys the Streamyard link, I specifically tell you the time I'm starting, 5 o'clock, and then even when I remind people of the show when the show starts, I usually send it out like an hour 45, or hour 15 before the show starts. Usually, well, sometimes I do it a little closer, like half hour, so depending upon
Yeah.
if I'm.
I just tease that because a lot of people are late. So you tell them, no, it doesn't start at 5. It starts at 4:30, and then they'll be there for 5.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. If you remember, that's kind of what I told you the other day. Remember, I kind of said, remember when I was explaining to you why
Yeah.
sometimes we'll ask people to come 10 to 15 minutes early?
Yeah, but see, saying come to 10, 15 minutes early, that's not quite the same as, oh, the show starts at. See, you
Yeah.
at that point you're admitting that the show doesn't start till you're still admitting the show starts at a certain time.
Yeah.
But then again, everybody probably knows what time your show starts at this point. A lot of us, so it probably wouldn't work.
Yeah. I mean, well, even Tim got on me a little bit before, because like I guess a few weeks back, because it was the week that like it was the week that you were kind of out of town, and so I was like basically was like first 20 minutes into the show I was basically just here by myself,
Yeah.
and I messaged him if he was coming on, and he kind of was you know he basically that's when he called me like said I was being a little pushy and so I just okay I realized I just okay maybe I need to calm down a little bit there but
Yeah. Oh, I get where you're coming from, and I can get where he's coming from. You're trying, you don't really want to do these shows by yourself because you want to try and make it entertaining. Because sometimes it's hard to be entertaining by yourself.
yeah. Well, it's very hard, especially when you know that a big part of what I'm trying to do is stir up conversations,
Yeah,
stir up dialogue, and you can't have a conversation
with you.
without at least one other person to talk to. The
Well, yeah, you can have a conversation with yourself. It's just probably not a good idea on the live
yeah,
on air.
right. Some people might think that you need to be locked in an insane asylum somewhere if you start doing that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just a little. Yeah. Hey, Rick. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you think about the word conversation, right? The first three letters con usually imply with. So
Yeah.
with something there usually has to be at least one other entity there, to all right. So we're coming up on 12 minutes now. So all right. So what I want to start off with here, of course, and this will since we don't seem to have anybody else in the chat as of right now. This
Yeah.
will probably be more for those who may watch this on the replay. So Rick, and then for those who come in as we're talking, you wanna you wanna kind of give your impressions on what we read the other night?
Well, so Friday night we were live, and of course we were reading from Best Comics, which was put out by Standard Comics at the time, if I remember right, or was it a
Yeah.
different name?
Well, it was probably under a different, but standard was generally standard slash better book slash. Here, I'll look it up real
Yeah,
quick here.
I just I just don't want to. I want to be a little
As
thorough. So we end up reading a bunch of, as Mike says, a bunch of reprints from the newspapers, strips. They were like 9 panel. Well, 3 layers usually, 2 to 3 layers. I think three. So, um, and they were just different ones from various newspapers of the time, I guess, or
Yep.
but I don't remember all of them, but they were, all usually pretty much gag type stuff or semi gag or word puns, which was made them funny. That's in a lot of ways that's my sort of thing, especially the word puns and all that.
Hmm.
Basing stuff off of that. There was like 4 or 5 different. I think we did 4 or 5 different
Right. Well, yeah, four or
ones.
five different
There was
features.
one superhero story in amongst that we read
Yeah, that was the
first,
first one we read.
the
Yeah,
Red
so the
Mask.
company would eventually become standard, but at the time it was known as Better Publications Incorporated.
Okay, so
That's the name they were
better
published under.
corporations produce best comics.
Yeah, yeah, Better Publications Incorporated. So, so
Okay,
yeah, among the features we covered, of course, as you said, Adventures of the Red Mask. That was the one superhero story.
yeah,
Silly Willy, Happy, The Adventure of Nervy Nerds, um, Peggy Wow, Jigger, Pop's Night Out, Jams. Those are more or less the features that we kind of went
yeah.
over, right?
I think so. Don't remember all of them offhand, but that sounds like them all. Um, well, the Red Mask again was a reprint from the newspaper, and I think that took place down in South America, somewhere
Yeah,
in South
something like
America.
that.
So, you know, it's a superhero thing. It's um I'm not sure what his powers was. I think he was more detective, almost detective like. Um, I'm not sure whether he had super strength or anything like that. So, but it didn't. I don't think it really showed that. Of course, it liked to skip over some things here and there when it wrote its new introduction each, I guess, what would be week or whatever. Whenever it
Mhm.
came out in the papers, so you'd have a little caption blurb saying what's gone
Mhm.
on, and they might skip over a rescue of somebody and say in that they were rescued. So, but it was a newspaper strip. So what do you expect? You don't get a lot. Um, I think from those as much as you do a regular comic book.
Right.
Um, but overall, it was a good story or stories. Stories,
Mhm.
depends on how you want to figure it out. There was a couple, I think, wasn't that one? Leaps in logic or whatever. It just seemed weird, a couple
Yeah.
parts. The plot holes that I always seem to find.
Yeah. But as
Um,
I told you, with humor ones, the humor ones were more cartoony. So those
yeah,
leaps in logic were
a little bit more
necessary
to be expected.
because they were they were cartoony. They were meant to be. Anyway, we have J.R. Exner here. Hail Lord Xenu and Princess Xena, our only true savior. Hail Mike and Rick. Hey J.R. Of course, if you can help us out by liking and sharing the stream, seeing if we can get some more friendly people in here to view the stuff, view the show. That'd be appreciated. Also, if anything here grabs your attention that we talk about, feel free to comment and or ask questions, and we will try to answer the questions to the best of our ability. We're just talking a little bit about what we read on Friday, from Best Comics Volume 1, Number 2, from, what was at the time known as Better Publications Incorporated. Eventually, it would be absorbed into Standard slash Better
Yeah,
slash Nador. So, slash
but the best comics end at 4, if I'm right, if I remember from what you're reading. So they would produce other comics, just not necessarily that one.
Yeah. Well, we were reading issue number 2 there.
Two, yeah,
That was the only issue available for that particular book. You know, so um, now why
uh,
that is, I can't tell you, but you know, yeah. One of the things I was even bringing up, on Record Show last night, when you look particularly at the humor strips, the humor comics of the time, some
yeah,
some of the names of the features, like in the case with Stanley, you had Silly Willy, you had Nervy Nerds, some of the alliteration there, some of the
yeah,
and some of the punny type names too. Silly Willy, Nervy Nerd, Jigger, Jams, Happy. Well, Happy's simple, pretty simple one, and Pop's Night Out. You see other examples in other comics like when you go
yeah,
over the quality stuff, you go some of the reprints they show, so like Lollapalooza, Mickey,
yeah.
Bungle Family, Jane Arden, so uh,
And hello, Jr. I should have said it when Rex. Yeah, and most of the other ones would have been like watch reading a Bugs Bunny cartoon or something similar like that, Bugs Bunny or Woody Woodpecker or
well,
something
that's
to that
another thing I
effect.
brought up on Rector's show last night too, is that how cartoons and comics seem to have this interconnection because you know they got adapted into, like, if it started out as a comic, it would sometimes get um, adapted into like an animated short and vice versa. You know, uh,
Yeah,
like the Fleischer Popeye cartoons, for example, were originally in the newspapers. They were part of the King Feature Syndicate, along with like Phantom and Flash Gordon and Mandrake the Magician and some of those. But you had those, and then you had and like from what I've even seen as pretty recently too, there were some comics that were like Captain and the Kids, which was a newspaper strip that got adapted into the comic books. I think it was probably might have been Dell or United Features that did Captain the Kids, but they apparently they were they were trying to think here. They were adapted into animated short form by Van Buren Studios, and there were even some comics a little later that were even developed into movie series. Of course, Superman and Batman being probably the most famous, but Captain
Yeah,
Marvel, Congo Bill, Hop Harrigan,
yeah.
Harry and the Pirates were all adapted into movie serials.
Yeah, well, I think the Shadow, Green Hornet,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch of others. Oh, I should have asked JR, how are you tonight? How's your weekend been? And so yeah, so like well, I was gonna probably say, the all the other ones were basically funnies, like I said, Bugs Bunny type stuff, not with
Yeah.
anamorphic characters, but people,
Like nervy
basically
nervy
kids.
nerds, for example, being launched from a train smokestack into the air and then catching the wing of a plane. That was probably something else, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Those ones you expect the fantastic leap in logic because they work on cartoon physics, or what's been called cartoon physics nowadays.
Right.
Back then they never even thought of that term, you know but because of stuff like that, cartoons
It's just
physics.
one of those things. It's just one of those things that would be considered funny. It's like
Yeah,
seeing a guy whose rear end is stuck in a train smokestack, and then it getting so hot that it launches him like well into
yeah,
the air, and then for him, and then he's all of a sudden able to grab onto the wing of a plane.
yeah, grab onto a plane that just happens to be coming by.
Yeah, I mean that kind of stuff, and then well, even in some of the relational like
Then
let's see,
falls into the water and starts walking in the bottom of the a lake or ocean or whatever it is,
right
and
there,
not
there's
having to breathe.
let's see, there was the one where the jams one of the episode one of the stories in the jams was, and we have Shadowhawk here. Hey, Shadowhawk.
Hey, Shadowhawk, JR says, "Hello, my week has been pleasant and mellow. Thank you."
All right, and then and Shadowhawk, I know I sent you the Streamyard link, so if you want to come in and join in on the conversation, hail Mike and Rick, hail the chat. So if you want to come in and join in on the conversation here,
Yeah,
please do. And if you guys haven't already, you guys can
like and share,
like and share and see if we can get some more friendly people
or
watching.
share and like.
Yeah, yeah, that'd
But
be
I'm not sure what more can be said about the stuff we read. Like I said, most of the things were the funny type ones, which is good, and they were funny. They get usually gave me a chuckle or a laugh. They do a page at a time. Like, I don't know, about
oh
nine
yeah,
panels at
and
max.
and and of course for those who have babies that like to ball, here's an idea. Here's an idea for you. See if this works to get the neighbors to get the baby to stop crying. Start having an argument with your significant other. Remember that one, Rick?
Yeah, yeah, that
That was in the jams feature.
yeah, they had neighbors that their baby was crying and all the time, and they wouldn't put it to sleep, you know. Um, but then they started arguing because they noticed usually when they argued, the neighbors would quiet their babies so they could listen to them argue. So they started arguing so they would have the neighbors quiet their baby, and then they just kept quiet. They just did their thing.
Yeah, so that was kind of a
Yeah,
some of those little slice of life stuff. Those can be very entertaining. The slice of life humor like that. So Shadowhawk saying, "Waiting for Mama Hawk, cooking dinner." But thanks, fellas. No problem.
yeah,
So yeah, so at least you gave a pretty good summary there, Rick.
yeah,
So I guess the only thing we can do now that you've done that, and of course, people on the replay can probably, if they want to hear what we were talking about on that and your analysis, they
yeah.
can.
Go take a look at Friday's stream. I think a couple of the guys were here. I'm not sure whether they were there for the whole thing, but
Yeah, I
we
know
got
Apex dropped in for a few minutes. Um, so anyway, so now and of course I know I did highlight Rick's links earlier that he showed
yeah.
earlier. So let's see. I guess it would be a good time now to well, unless there was something on your mind that you wanted to talk about, Rick. Anything you wanted to talk about,
Nothing.
promote, or anything like that, or
Well, just I've started doing some shorts on my remastering of my comics. I'm not sure what else I'll put in there. I'm thinking of a few different things because my remastering is only going to take up 24 shorts, and then I got to figure out other stuff to do with it. So,
well,
you know,
when you're saying shorts, are you filming these shorts? Like are you making cartoons, or is this just for?
no, no, no. This is YouTube shorts. Like I'm taking videos that I've done that were 5 or 10 minute, 5 to 10 minutes. I'm putting them a minute of showing me doing stuff on my remastering of my
Oh, okay.
Canadian Shield 1 and putting new audio with it for a minute.
Hmm.
Um, any future Comic Cons? Yeah. Well, yes. Well, yes. In Here in Hamilton, they have something called um art crawl every month on the second Friday. I'm thinking of trying to go to it next month. Oh crap, I might not be able to go to it next month. I think I booked myself for next month on the second Friday. Oh no, that's the first Friday because I booked myself for the 7th, right?
Yeah, the 7th on my show. But that's the
Yeah,
first Friday.
yeah. But then and then there's here a bigger version of it in September, which I'm gonna try and go to.
Well, you were also telling me that in September as well,
Yeah,
you'll be coming out to my neck of the woods, right?
yeah. The In September, the week after, what's called Super Crawl, which is a bigger version, a weekend version of the art crawl plus a little bit more. Um, I will be going down to LA for Christian Comic Con, and then I'm back here in Hamilton a week after that for Hamilton Comic Con.
Hmm.
And then a couple weeks into December, I am going to Athol, Massachusetts to meet up with to a comic festival or day. I'm not sure what you would call it. What Chris and Diane are hosting with their local library down there.
Hmm.
So I'll be having a table down there.
Oh, okay.
So
So that
September,
sounds like
September,
quite a bit
October
of a
is really going to be a busy month for me. So
yeah.
unfortunately, I probably won't be able to help out during that month.
Well, if I can get back up to five to seven people in the rotation again, shouldn't be too much of a problem,
Yeah,
Um,
I might
because
be able to
obviously
do like the
by then hopefully metal will be back, and
yeah.
you know,
I
I mean,
should be able to.
I already have at least one person scheduled for September. That's RJ on the 29th. So at least
Yeah,
of the 5 weeks there, I already have one. It's just with him. I have to, of course, schedule in advance. But everybody else, we can schedule it as we're rolling along here. So And
Yeah, so
hopefully
that
Apex will show up tonight because, of course, I want to talk to him, see how he might want to, you know.
yeah, the 29th of September is the 1st of September I'm free, and then the 29th I would be free too.
Well,
And then
I
I'll
guess
be free. I
we'll
think
hit
I'm free on the
we'll hit all
6th.
that
Yeah, but that's
when
a lot late.
we
Comes a
get to
lot
that.
later.
Yeah, I mean that's still what about 2.5 months away.
Yeah, something like that.
So I mean, we'll hit that when we hit that. And you were saying that you were staying with Denali's. I guess you were telling me that Denali's is out my way too, right? Well,
Dillard,
in the same state, huh? Oh,
Jo-
Dillard,
John
Dillard.
Dillard. Yeah, I'm gonna be staying with John Dillard. He's gonna be throwing a party in my honor on the 17th of September down there,
Hmm,
and then the 18th I head back
hmm,
here, so I can be back in Hamilton for Hamilton Comic Con the next week.
hmm. All right. All right. So, anyways, anything else?
Um, well, I was saying something. Well, I was just saying about my shorts, and I already said about that. So we can go on to whatever. I'm good for now.
All right. So, what we'll do now then, again, unless of course the chat has anything they want to ask or anything like that, I guess what we'll do is we'll go into our, we're gonna, you know, as part of our conversation, we're gonna go over a couple of articles. One of the things that's been going on over the past few months is, of course, everything going on with the Punisher and what they've been doing to it. I covered one article the other day, on Thursday from Ivy Green, and then another one came out today. So we'll probably be going over those tonight to just stir up some conversation, see what people might have to say about what's being said in these things. So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and look at some of that. All right. So the first article here we're going to look at is this one. This one was from Avi Green. Left wing blog sure do love Jason Aaron's defamation of the Punisher, June 8th. And then he put that up June 8th, 2023. So that was on Thursday. All right. So, and we already read the title there. Avi Green published the other day. And then here's I guess a tweet from somebody where they were talking about doing the impossible and making the Punisher book I actually like, and all he had to do was upend Frank Castle's entire status quo and make the story about how everything he does and everything he purports to be is detestable. So, anyway, so this is I guess Avi speaking now in this part of it. Marvel Comics continues to emphasize the modern left narrative that Frank Castle is nothing more than a quote unquote murderer, not pausing for even a second to consider how past writers portrayed him and how he was first introduced as an anti crime vigilante who went after mainly lethal mobsters and such after a syndicate murdered his own family in New York City's Central Park during a picnic outing. Now, the far left, Polygon, is paying lip service to current SJW writer Jason Aaron's newest take on the Punisher, which sees his late wife resurrected only as an excuse for rejecting Frank after all he did to avenge innocent lives like hers and their children and prevent more innocents from being murdered by violent criminals again.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of
Well,
twisted. Oh, go ahead, Brett.
I was gonna say I can see sort of maybe his wife's response in that way, but um, you know, they'd probably like the Punisher if they made the Punisher like an Antifa. He was going after right wing people.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if
Because the way Antifa does what he does, or try, maybe not to the killing part, but they do his lethal tactics on people.
Hmm.
You know?
Or what you might argue is that maybe they have the same mindset that he does when it comes to that.
Yeah,
In other words, they feel that if they're going to get their way, then they have to eliminate whatever obstacles, and the right wing is their obstacle that they have to eliminate.
yeah,
They want they're begging for a civil war. The problem is that a lot of right wingers know how to use guns, and it would probably not end well if
yeah,
right wing really did want to go off on them.
yeah.
You know? So um, now I guess this is I guess from the Polygon article what we're about to read here. Um, from the Polygon article that Avi is referencing here. Punisher from writer Jason Aaron and artist Jesus Saiz and Paul Azaceta is not explicit. It's not explicitly a book that tries to redeem a character co-opted by hate. Now you notice how he put that in bold right there. A character co-opted by hate.
Yeah, hate for evil or hate for, crime, criminals.
But basically, now the tactics of what they did, it's kind of a classic tactic what a lot of the SJWs do here. When they say, "Well, all right wingers are just are just filled with hate," with even when there is some legit justification for what they're doing, because it's kind of like it's one of those things where if you really want to kill an argument or kill debate, kill legitimate debate on the subject,
Yeah,
just accuse somebody of something real horrific, and that will stop them dead in their tracks. You know,
yeah,
call somebody a murderer, call somebody a rapist, call somebody a child molester, and that will stop them dead in their tracks because then they'll get caught up. No, I'm not that. I'm not that. It's like, and that's what they expect. And instead, just take a step back and say, hey, look, that's what you want to think of me. That's your opinion, and you know where you can stick your opinion. You know.
yeah. This next little paragraph's going to be interesting, especially the last of it.
Oh, were you reading it as we were talking there?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not a book that's unaware of the context in which it exists. And that's never felt more sneakily true than in its conclusion, in which, after becoming an unstoppable god of murder and war, Frank Castle's resurrected wife undoes his godlike powers, divorces him, and takes
Okay,
all his
I
money.
got a question. How can you divorce somebody that is widowed? You're no longer you're his dead wife. You get resurrected. You're no longer his wife, technically, in the eyes of the law. You'd have no case to be able to divorce him. You're automatically separated.
I can't answer that one for you, Rick, because at least okay. Here's the thing: at least when you see those leaps in logic in the golden age, at
Yeah,
least there's a legit reason for it. You can reason that okay, it's still early on in the medium, and they're still learning, and they're still trying to figure that stuff out. But for this, these people have been at this for a while, and that leap in logic, can't be explained. It's like but then what many commentators have argued here is that the whole point of what Jason Aaron was doing was in part because the Punisher had started to become synonymous with a lot of people who tend to be more conservative,
yeah,
who tend to believe more in like the United States Constitution, in the right to bear
yeah,
arms and stuff like that. This is a way of trying to not only emasculate Frank Castle, but all those evil wingers.
yeah,
You know, it's like these people. It's like it's one of those things where you know this is their way of emasculating their opposition, trying to eliminate their opposition without actually physically going out and trying to actually do it.
Yeah.
because they know if they actually did take the streets and you know they get people do have a legit right to defend themselves,
Yeah.
right? And if you come at somebody with the intent to kill them, then you should
Yeah.
expect you should expect the same in kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, of
And
course,
you should without me going into detail or saying anything more than that, you should know exactly what I mean.
yeah.
Right.
And then, of course, then there's this last part here and takes all his money. Well, if he's a unstoppable god of murder and war, what the hell does he have money for? He doesn't need it. And even if you take Frank Castle in um, as the regular Punisher, again, um, what money the only money he has is what he takes off of the bad guys that he takes out. You
Yeah,
know,
which
so
which
he's
again
just gonna go get more.
right. I mean, and again, this is another piece of twisted logic from the SJWs. Okay, you remember you remember what I've been saying a lot about the time we're in right now, right? You
Yeah,
know, referencing Isaiah, I believe it's chapter 6, verse 9, in which we are in a time in which good is called evil and evil is called good.
yeah,
So the SJWs are they make the argument here, instead of vilifying the lethal mobsters who are breaking the law, who are going out and robbing, raping, and murdering people,
yeah.
okay, they're actually praising
Those
the
people.
lethal mobsters,
Yeah.
and
Although I do have to say something about he undoes his godlike powers. Well, Frank Castle wouldn't care, or not that much, because he would just go back to his guns and all that. You
well,
know.
okay, the Frank Castle that most fans know.
Yeah.
Again, what the whole idea of what Jason Aaron was trying to do here, as I said, he was trying to emasculate Frank
Yeah.
Castle, along with all those old fans who really did like him. You know,
Yeah.
this is like with one fell brushstroke was a huge
Yeah.
emasculation, not just of Frank Castle, but all the people who were fans of the original Punisher work, of the work that like
Yeah.
Barry Conway and Ross Andrew and
You know.
Mike Darren and whoever else worked on it. How they built the character. So
But like I said, I can see where his wife is coming from, but like you said, the Frank Castle that everyone knew. So if you're gonna resurrect him, you just want his wife. This first of all, this guy has no idea what the Punisher's all about.
mhm,
Um, I haven't read much of the Punisher, seen much of the Punisher, but I know more about the Punisher than this guy.
yeah.
And but the only thing you would do is not divorce him because you can't divorce him. She just rejects him. That would hurt Frank the most. She'd walk away from him, want nothing to do
Yeah.
with him.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and the yeah, and they do actually talk a little bit about this in here. We'll get to that
Yeah,
in a moment. But you see, what you have to remember too is what a lot like what the what to an SJW, to a
yeah,
social justice warrior, what Frank Castle represents is a problem that has been
yeah,
has been epidemic for the last 25, 30 years or so.
yeah,
In other words, they see situations like the school shootings that have happened over the last 20, 25 years, the increase in public shootings, school shootings, mall shootings,
yeah,
club shootings, and they say, oh, it's because people are reading and watching guys like the Punisher. That people, it's not the fact that the individual who decided to shoot may have some mental issues and feel that
yeah,
was the way to resolve their issues. No, it's like, um, I mean, okay, I'm sure I'm sure we all have that impulse to where
Yeah.
sometimes the fastest way to deal with a problem would be just to pick up a gun and
Yeah, but
just
most
go
of
on
us don't
shooting.
because, we got an ounce of sanity.
Right. In other words, but what it's like, what's the difference between, let's say, those who do and those who don't? It's that the people who don't realize, they do have some cognitive functioning there that reminds them of, okay, that's one of those things that's a last resort type of thing. Whereas the people who do decide to do it feel that that is the last resort, that we're at a point where, okay, we just need to deal with this, and we're at the last resort, and some may argue that we're not. You know,
Yeah.
so I
Uh,
mean,
I was just
you
gonna
were about to
say,
say something.
yeah, just maybe we should try and start getting through the article.
Yeah, we're already
Oh,
at
because I'm
46
sure
minutes.
we're gonna harp on some points here even more, or at least me.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, the log line on Punisher was that Frank Castle was the destined avatar of the Beast, the god of murder, worshipped by the Hand Ninjas from Daredevil comics. So yeah, what they did is they took away his guns and they just gave him swords. They altered
Yeah,
his
I knew about
his
that,
symbol.
but
Yeah, yeah,
it's but still, he's the destined avatar of the beast for the god. He murdered bad guys. The hand didn't exactly go after bad guys. They were the bad guys that Frank Castle would go after.
right. So and it
Yeah, we're
lar-
gonna get this guy to be the avatar for us. He's killing us. We want him to be our avatar.
yeah. Again, SJW logic. It makes sense to them, right? And it largely stuck to that Gonzo mandate, with Saiz um, delivering the epic visual to match. Frank developed a suite of superpowers and used them to strike down armies and murder Ares himself. The book was anything but about taking out low level criminals and earthly mobsters, which is who he went after. It was low level, it was criminals and mobsters.
Yeah,
But Azaceta, on the other hand, delivered the flashbacks to the story, redefining Frank's childhood in the key of, quote, evil god destined serial killer, unquote, because that's what they saw Frank Castle as. And telling the story of Frank's wife, Maria Castle, in such a way as to make it clear that if there was ever anything good in Frank, it was from his family, who grew to hate and fear him for loving war more than them. Now, granted, I know only a little bit more about I didn't actually read the comics, at least back when they came out, but from what I understand, the Punisher, I think, was developed in the 70s. It was originally created in the 70s,
I
which
think
was,
so. Yeah, by
and
one
as
of the
I
ones.
understand it, Frank was a soldier in the Vietnam War. So he's coming out of
Um,
that experience, I think.
well, no, no, no. It might have said up there, but I think he was a cop.
Yeah. It didn't say in this article, but
I thought it said right at the beginning.
no, it didn't.
There, Frank Castle is nothing. Pastor. Yeah, a syndicate murdered his family, and well,
An anti-crime vigilante who went after. They didn't go further into his past though. They just said he was
yeah,
introduced as an anti. But for him, even early on, he seemed to have quite a bit of not. I mean, even as he was depicted on the Spider-Man the animated series in the '90s,
yeah.
you know he had an incredible knowledge of ordnance and all that. So I
Yeah,
was always under the impression he did have some form of military background.
yeah. I think he was a cop on the SWAT team. I could be wrong. It's either he was in the army or he was a cop. I think they depending on well, especially for the movies, they've switched between the two.
Hmm.
So
Well, I guess there is one way we can. Let me see if I can.
look it up.
Yeah, I'll go to the Marvel fandom site here. That should at least have a. For the Prime Marvel Universe Earth 616. All right. No, that's not what I was looking for. Okay, so according to this site, to the Marvel database Wikipedia here, Lieutenant Francis Frank Castle, born Francis Castiglione, aka the Punisher, was an Italian American former U.S. Marine who
Okay.
served in multiple tours of duty, including the Singapore War, where he received the Bronze Star, Silver Star, and Purple Hearts. So yeah, he came from a military background,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
what I thought. That's what I was the impression
Yeah.
I was.
Like I said, I've read. I haven't read a lot of Punisher. I read Punisher 2099, and they've went between, like I said in the movies, between being a cop and a marine. So I forgot which one it was.
Yeah. So initially, it was introduced as being a former Marine. Anyways, um, let's continue on with this. Is this Punisher series gonna stop people from worshiping the character's murders as righteous behavior? No. Well, of course not, because again, he's murdering bad guys. He's actually doing something that I think most people, you know, again, with that, most people have probably thought about at
Yeah.
some point. Um, there ain't no book anybody can write or draw that's gonna do that. Was it a fascinating read with a conclusion that quietly emasculates Frank in all the ways that those same people consider most important? Yes. Which is what Jason Aaron was, I think, what Jason Aaron and a lot of these lefties were trying to do. Anyways, back to Avi here now. Back to Avi giving his perspective. Here, the writer is justifying the notion of turning Frank into a beta male. So this is Avi commenting on the writer of the article that we just
Yeah.
read. Um, Beta male who can't possibly be heroic in any way, shape, or form and completely ignores the violent crimes committed by many of the villains he faced off with in the past. This is one of the most truly insulting tales I've ever read of, with the worst part being that Punisher co creator, Jerry Conway, is thoroughly unlikely, um, in all his modern wokeness, to lament the destruction of a character he and Ross Andrew um, worked to create in the mid 70s. So, yes, as I had always thought, they'd said he was in a bunch, and I thought he might have even been involved in Vietnam War because he was originally created in the mid 70s there.
Yeah.
Related, why Marvel is ashamed of the Punisher and fans still embrace him. And I think again this is continuing with Avi talking here. I think the worst part, the writer of this main article here, not
Yeah.
um, I think the worst part is that Bill Mantlo may have sowed the seeds exploited by today's PC advocates around 1983, since he may have told at the time he disliked the Punisher and wrote a story in Spectacular Spider-Man where Frank gunned down the wrong kind of people. Well, gee, what makes Mantlo think that's going to improve anything by shoehorning Frank into scripts where he'd be made to look bad? Mantlo's writing based on that was very hit or miss, and it's a shame he let he had to let his personal disagreements get the better of him at the time. If the early '80s story were decanonized, um, it'd be for the best. There's no need to allow a bad storyline to remain nailed in continuity till the end of time.
Um, I wouldn't think it would. Depending, I don't know the whole story, obviously, but depending on how it was handled, I think that would have been a great story. Because how does Frank deal with the fact when he gets it wrong?
Hmm.
You see
Yeah, and
what I
that
mean?
kind of story can work. How did he deal with? How does he how does he process that and move
Yeah,
on from that and still still goes about doing what he does? But
yeah,
then they don't indicate here what they mean by wrong kind of people. Are they just simply meaning innocent people, or are they trying to make? Well, I don't think they would have been. They would have been trying to do. I don't think they would have been doing too much race baiting back in '83 like they do today. But
yeah. I would assume it means innocent people, but I could be wrong. You know, but again, it's like if it's innocent, I wish it would, like you said, been a little bit more precise.
right.
Um, but the thing is, I think, and again, I don't know how the story was dealt with. I would like to know
Hmm.
because you know if it was about how he dealt with it, the question is how did he deal with it? Blah blah blah. There's a lot of variables here. Metal Series says, "Hey, sorry, can't come in today. Too busy on my end." No problem, Metal.
All right. Yeah, I didn't.
Hope
I
you're
didn't.
having a good week.
Yeah, I. It's too bad you aren't able to join us, Metal, because I think you would have even quite a few things to say about this article we're going over right now. It'd
Yeah,
be interesting to hear what you'd have to say on we're going over this in another article where they're talking about what they've been doing to the Punisher for the last few months. You know
yeah,
what Jason Aaron in particular has been doing to him. So it would be nice to hear. I mean, well, even if you can't join us in the studio here, feel free. If anything does grab your attention, feel free to comment in the chat if and when you can. And we'll respond to it. Um, and thank you for the like and the share. So, anyways, let's continue on reading the article here. So, let's see. Here's a bit more about the premise of this 12-part story from Bam Smack Pow, who's just as embarrassingly bad in their take on the Aaron tale. So this is from this next article, from the article they just mentioned from Bam Smack Pow. I mean, what a name for a magazine or something, right? Right?
yeah.
Bam Smack Pow. Okay, so during his 12-issue run, Frank Castle joined the Hand, gained supernatural powers, and his wife, Maria, was resurrected. All of this concluded after Maria attempted to kill him. She hated how he used their family's death to fuel his war. Frank didn't understand until she took half of his worth and started a charity in their children's names. She told him that's the right way to honor their son and daughter. After that, Frank used the last of his powers to disappear. He's later seen in Weird World keeping kids safe. So,
Okay.
okay, go ahead.
Well, I can see how his wife would feel. That I can see because in some ways I can agree that going down and hunting criminals down and murdering them is probably not the best way to honor your family that was murdered.
Yeah,
But I get Frank's point for sort of doing it, as
but
we
then but
mentioned.
then but first off, who says he can't do both?
Yeah,
Who says that he can't gun down the bad guys and still, with whatever wealth he has, contribute positively to society?
yeah.
Do you know who else does that? Well, maybe not going to the extent of killing criminals, but you know who else does that? Really goes
Every
out,
other superhero?
huh?
Every other superhero?
Well, but there's one specifically I'm referring to.
Batman?
Correct. You
But,
know,
like, she might have been, he said, okay, I get take down the criminals, but, maybe not kill them, bring them to justice somehow, instead of killing them.
mhm, yeah.
Um, like, there's good points to this story, but maybe the execution was
Well,
bad.
okay. Here, with what they just said right there. Here's what their their reasoning reminds me of.
Yeah,
Okay, here with the paragraph that we just read there. Here's what their reasoning reminds me of. Okay, you remember all the stuff going on after the George Floyd,
yeah,
after George Floyd killing. Remember
yeah,
everything that went down with that and how
yeah,
how people were talking about, oh, we got to defund the police, we got to take their guns, we got to do this and that, and instead of having police officers, we got to have counselors go on.
yeah,
That's the reason, and that is the
yeah,
stupidest reasoning
yeah.
behind all this.
Well,
Okay,
sometimes I would say you need the counselors, but you need them escorted by police, making sure they're safe because
right?
some of these,
Because if somebody, if somebody is hell bent on doing you harm, the only thing that you know, and even with, and again, they further emasculated police. They're further emasculating police, not just by taking guns, but also taking certain restraining techniques. You know,
yeah,
you know, you know, they to where they can't even really properly defend themselves because, oh, you can't have the knee in the guy's back because you're liable to suffocate him doing that. You know, you
yeah,
know, it's like, okay, if somebody intends to fight you and hurt you and maybe even go as far as kill you, you have to respond with lethal force to protect yourself. I'm sorry, but
yeah.
that's the case. I mean, there's another situation I'm reminded of that where it happened down. I think it was in Mississippi, Mississippi, or it may have even been Chicago. Actually, I think it was Mississippi. There was a specific unit developed in a Mississippi police precinct that dealt specifically with like gangs and stuff like that. And there was a case where a black guy was on his way home, and he was stopped, and then he tried to run from the police, and then when the police caught up to him, he decides to fight the police. And
Yeah,
now, granted, these guys weren't using weapons; they just were, he was fighting them, so they were fighting back, and there were like five, six, seven of these cops who were just beating on the guy. They weren't using any weapons.
okay,
They weren't shooting him. They were just using their fists. They were fighting
yeah.
back. He was fighting
Well,
them.
as much as I believe the police should be able to fight back in a situation like that, defend themselves and all that, but five or six of them depends on what you mean by beating on. Did they just try and get him down so he couldn't make anything, or was it an
Well,
all-out brawl?
apparently the guy was really feisty.
Yeah,
I mean, there are some guys, now
I could
indications
see
where he was
one.
not on drugs or anything, but whether it's drug induced or whether the adrenaline was just flowing, there are some
Yeah,
times when people, when your adrenaline flowing, it's like you could be like a madman. You could be like a rabid beast.
yeah.
And when
I
you're like
just
that, don't sometimes it does take three, four, five people to take you down.
yeah
It's
to pin you down, but that I can get. I'm just Not sure
Well,
with the
okay,
way
but
you
it
described
goes
it,
back to
whether
what I
it
want.
was them all punching him at the same time or
Yeah, but the reason being, because it goes back to what I was just telling you too. One of the
yeah,
things I just said too, is that even some of the restraint holds, like even if they were to get him pinned down, and if he's feisty enough, yes. If you got somebody who's like fighting you, and they're either a
yeah,
big
you
guy,
definitely need to dogpile them, for lack of a
yeah,
better way of saying.
and you do sometimes need to put your knee on their back,
Yeah, oh yeah,
on the top
that
of the
stuff
top
I
of their
agree
head.
with. That
But but here's the thing, Rick. Here's the problem though. Because a lot of the crying that these SJWs been doing about police brutality and all that,
yeah,
a lot of police departments can't even do that anymore.
yeah.
They can't
I just
properly restrain somebody, because
and
that's how the situation where they were like, because they can't even,
yeah,
because if they use their knees, if they do anything like that,
yeah.
oh, it's police brutality.
Yeah, I get that, and I disagree with them not being able to use the tactics that they need to be able to
Well,
restrain
that's why
somebody.
that. But
All I was trying to comment in the story that you told was I wasn't sure whether they were all beating on him like fists at one time, or it was
yeah, I think they
intermittent
were. I think
between
they
them.
were, but I think
Like
the
he
only
attacked
reason
one
they
police
were,
officer, they hit back. He attacked another police officer, they hit back. Was it all at once or just
from
like an
what I
individual?
understand, it was all of them at once. But the only reason they were doing it that way is because apparently this unit, for some reason, was not allowed to use any kind of restraint holds. They literally had to beat them down to, because apparently they can't.
Yeah,
Apparently they were not allowed to use any kind of restraint holds. But
yeah. Well,
anyway,
I'd like to know a little bit more to make a better judgment on
yeah,
that.
I mean, well, it happened like a year or so ago. So
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
probably does.
I'm remembering back, but
Yeah, I get
you know,
that.
my but my point in bringing the whole thing up was this: the reasoning that they have here for what they're saying, what we just read there, reminds me of the same reasoning of the idea of, oh,
Yeah,
need to be emasculated.
yeah,
You know, that that's that's what that's what I think the whole police brutality, and I personally think the whole, it's a little, because maybe if instead of seeing the officer as a threat, maybe if they cooperated with the officer more, you wouldn't find
yeah,
as many of these people getting beat up on or getting killed if they were
yeah,
cooperative, you know.
yeah.
And in
That I
George
agree with.
Floyd case, and then I think a few some of the others that you heard about where you had
Yeah,
a black man getting killed in at least two of those cases, from what I understand, the George Floyd and the other guy that I'm thinking of were actually on drugs, so um, that's another thing to take into. But anyways, 12 issues, and Jason Aaron created something different. He created a series about nearly 50-year-old man and changed him from top to bottom. That is something that should be praised. No, it shouldn't, because what you did is you basically flipped the bird to a lot of the people who, a lot of
yeah,
the manuscript tradition, to cater to people who, as has been pointed out time and again, will not actually buy the books.
yeah,
You know, a lot of these people that you're supposedly trying to cater to won't even buy the book. So you're writing books for people who probably won't even buy
buy
them.
it.
No
Yeah,
less read them, right?
yeah.
So
Because these people, most of them, it's comic books aren't their thing, especially superhero comic books.
yeah, they're just screaming into the wind for the purpose of screaming into the wind. So, anyways, back to the article here. Now we're back to Avi here speaking. So they're also, in pure knee-jerk fashion, justifying the abuse of a character whose stories should have been retired long ago. And as some may realize, it's unlikely the abuse will stop with this disgust, even if Frank is Frank's in the afterlife now, the article gets worse. So going back to the article that he's referencing here, there have
Yeah.
been mixed reviews on. I'm going to speed things up a little bit, so feel free to cut me off if anything does pop up.
Yeah.
But we're going to try to, because we do, we should probably try to quicken the pace a little bit here.
Yeah.
There have been mixed reviews on this Punisher run. Some people are saying it took away what made the Punisher special, which I believe is true.
Yeah.
Um, but however you feel about that, characters are going to change. It's been evident over the last 5 years. Classic romances no longer exist. Teams are disbanding and heroes are becoming villains and vice versa. Um, Again, alluding back to Isaiah 6:9 right there. That's not a bad thing. Keeping things the same is how people get bored. That is why Jason Aaron's bold move with the Punisher will help revitalize the character. Well, I don't
I don't
agree.
think it'll help vitalize the character, but I do agree characters
You
need to
don't need to
change a
change
little.
it that dramatically though. I get the underlying reason there. Yeah, you do make some maybe you do add a little bit more depth to the character. You go a little deeper into the character to get into his head a little bit more, get in their head a little bit more, a little bit more background. But you don't need to
Yeah.
drastically change the character. You don't need to snap your fingers and all of a sudden turn a guy into
Yeah.
a girl or a white person into a black. You don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to get the guy thinking about what he does and why he does it or whatever. If you're going to change him, just not.
You don't need this drastic a change.
Yeah. I think it would have been better if they just had him, go from killing to maybe, kicking butts and taking names
Yeah.
instead
No.
of kicking butt and not taking names.
Yeah. So I mean, now maybe when they originally created Frank Castle, maybe this was their way of like differentiating him from Batman, because by this point, Batman was no longer using guns or killing people when Frank Castle was created. Maybe that was kind of to present a contrast. Okay, here's the way Batman does it, and now we're going to show you a character who does it maybe a little bit different. Because
Yeah.
similar circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So,
Well, he is called the Punisher. There's more than one way to punish somebody, too. So,
mhm. Yeah. Anyways, it started with Punisher skull logo being changed. There was speculation as to why this was happening. A lot of it was down to the logo becoming synonymous with violence. Um, Again,
um, a skull synonymous with violence. Um, well, geez, they wouldn't have thought of that 500 years ago.
well, let's see, Skull and Bones, pirates, right?
Yeah,
Osteo poison, you know. Then there,
that's the whole point. It's supposed to be a little, let's be associated with violence to get the idea across to the criminals, you
uh-huh,
morons.
yeah,
Anyways, I'll shut up now.
yeah. Then there's giving him powers. People always wanted to know what it would look like if Frank Castle didn't need guns. Now we know. He could kill a
Oh,
god.
I'd say no to that. Nobody
Well,
of his
okay,
fans did.
yeah. I mean, this is just one person's interpretation of what that thought process would be. It might be interesting to see if the original creators went down another road. Maybe what? Well, in a way, you could argue. You could argue it was in a way, with how they developed Batman.
Yeah.
You know,
But he could kill a god. Well, he didn't care about gods. He could take on the Avengers. The only way he cared about taking on the Avengers if they got in his way to killing a
yeah.
monster.
I remember from Spider-Man the animated series that was kind of the same thing. Frank Castle, the Punisher would cross paths with Spider-Man, and a lot of times it's like I remember one line that Christopher Daniel Barnes, who was voicing Spider-Man in that series, said, next time you decide to punish somebody, why don't you think about why you're punishing them or something to that effect. But anyways, finally, if Frank Castle has given up being a killer, this writer applauds that decision. Of course you do, because you're a far left loon. You're somebody who probably deserves, who probably should be in an insane asylum somewhere with a straitjacket on, bouncing your head against a rubber wall. Frank Castle's greatest attribute isn't killing, and he isn't defined by his guns. I don't
Well,
know. Would you?
I could minutely agree with that. No, he's defined by the fact that he punishes people. He's the Punisher.
Yeah. If he's no longer fueled by war and killing, which he's not, he's fueled by punishing criminals. You know, that gives him a new outlook on life and how he decides to truly honor his family. That means new stories, friends, opportunities. Again, I can't wait for Marvel and DC to go under because of this garbage that they're doing.
You know,
Anyways, I think this is the last. Let me see here. I think this might be the last. No, oh, there's a little bit more afterwards. More afterwards. But anyways, I said speeding things along here. In that, okay, so this is Avi speaking again, and he makes a very interesting point here. In that case, is Wolverine defined by his blades? Um, as I may have noted at least a few other times, notice how nobody seems to have anything negative to say about an X Men mainstay who occasionally killed criminals as well, whether rightly or wrongly, and in sharp contrast to Punisher, nobody gives a D about Wolverine or what's defined him as a character. Classic hypocrisy right there.
yeah,
What do you
Wolverine, the new Punisher.
what do you say about that, Rick? Is that all you had to say, or
Yeah, well, it's true. It's true. Well, I wouldn't say he's defined by his. He is, but he isn't. He's defined more by his personality, but his claws or blades are a staple of the character.
well, and what a lot of these people may also would tend to forget is that one, he was not born with those claws, and
Yeah.
two,
Well, he
he
got
did
them
not
when
necessarily
his
make the
mutant
choice
powers
to have
developed.
those claws put into him. Those claws were put into him
No,
against his.
actually, they weren't. At first, he was born. I won't say he was born with them, but when his mutant powers developed, they were bone claws at first. If you read Wolverine Origins, they were bone claws, and when he got the adamantium put on, they were covered in adamantium as well.
Okay, so he did have because I was at least from what I knew of the story, the clause came about from when his adamantium was bonded to his bones.
No, he had bone claws before that.
All right.
Now
Again,
that was
I hadn't read a whole bunch of Marvel yet. You
yeah.
know,
This
so
they did this back in I think the early thousands or the 90s. The
yeah.
whole it's called Wolverine Origin. It was a 6-issue miniseries.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
got the issue, so I read it when it came out.
Yeah. Anyways, and while the writer who penned this puff piece may not think it's a bad thing that classic romance is being canned and heroes and villains switch places, it most certainly is troubling when it's all done for the desperate sake of PC wokeness.
Well,
And
that I
again,
can
and
agree with.
again, and again, I reiterate Isaiah 6:9,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Being called
there's
wrong
people
and
that
wrong
do
being
be.
called right.
I can see. I can see if it's done right, heroes becoming villains and villains become heroes. Redemption stories, and then some tragedy happens and somebody just snaps. It happens in real life, so I can see it.
The
But
one bad day
again, it's
storyline in Joker in the Batman franchise.
pardon.
The one bad day storyline in the
Uh,
Batman series.
not sure. I
It's
probably
a
read it
joke.
or seen it.
It's involving the Joker and how
Oh
basically
yeah, when he became the Joker, so to speak.
well okay yeah well basically I think it was called the one well let's see the one bad day story arc was the one where Joker basically he thought he was going to die, So he's gonna show. So he's gonna show everybody how one bad day can actually. This was the story. This was the storyline where he forced Commissioner Gordon to watch him kill or watch him paralyze Barbara Gordon.
Oh, okay. From The Killing Joke.
Yeah, the Killing Joke. That's the name of the. Yeah, that was the whole thing right
But
there.
yeah, I'm just saying, if it's done right, I can see that being done. That
That was
happening.
the case where it was done right. Is
Yeah,
probably yeah. Something he clearly doesn't want to acknowledge is the problem. What's disturbing is that today's largely leftist writers not only don't want to create art that's inspiring, but these hack op-ed writers don't want to pen articles that do either. In other words, they don't want to critique them. They don't want to,
yeah, they don't want their work critiqued.
it's
And
people like
that's the
myself.
only way you
It's
get better.
people. It's
Somebody
people
critiquing
like
your work.
myself, like Yellow Flash, like Avi Green here, who are going to sit there and critique them and pick them apart. You know. So let's see. So they wind up justifying some of the worst possible directions taken with classic creations and won't complain it's not improving a dismal situation, nor will they argue in favor of boycotting Marvel and DC for all the desecration they've happened upon their stable of characters for the sake of woke pandering.
Yeah,
And then this is, I think, the last paragraph of this order. There's no telling if this is seemingly the last Punisher story that'll ever be published, but if it is, it's a terrible one indeed. Yet the columnist refused to admit it. In all, their determination to be in lockstep with other PC advocates, um, emphasizing the notion the Punisher's very creation was wrong to begin with. Truly, however, the only real ending stories for the Punisher were in the mid 90s, and indeed, it should have stopped there. All this makes clear one of the greatest weaknesses with serial fiction as practiced in the USA. They simply don't know when to quit, and it's led to only so much PC abuse of classic creations ever since. When Marvel DC does finally fold, it'll be a blessing. So that's that article. Let's see, where are we at on?
yeah. 22 after.
Let's see, an hour and 22. So we probably have enough time to get to the next article, and we'll go probably try to go through a little quicker with that one. This one's actually an article that came out, and it is related to the one we granted. Woke Marvel Comics erases the Punisher due to problematic, quote unquote, conservative fan base. Article by Bleeding Fool published yesterday, actually, June 10th, 2023. Now, let me also say this, because I know other commentators have been, I know, like, for example, Yellow Flash has been covering this. I've heard from a few other commentators where, they believe they're going to shelve Punisher for now, but they'll likely bring him back in a year or two when sales are tanking. They need something fresh to try to pick up sales again. But I don't know how that's going to work. Especially if they keep writing the characters like this with this SJW garbage.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's get into this article. And this is one of the few times where we're actually going to do a newer article, on the show rather than one that I've already previously covered. So here we go. A year ago, progressive news outlets were calling the idea of the culture war a, quote, right-wing conspiracy theory, unquote, that had no basis in reality. Yet, the injection of far-left politics into entertainment media had already started years previous, with noticeable propaganda efforts in movies, streaming television, children's shows, and books, even commercial advertising was replete with progressive ideological imagery by 2016 onward. Now, okay, you know something, and I think that's a very good point. Here's something that I just thought of or realized here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember we've talked a lot about the Comics Code Authority and when it was established, right?
Yeah.
Do you know when it came to an end?
Um.
When basically it finally just came to when basically it just got to the point where basically every comic book publisher was essentially ignoring it.
Well, I know it started around the time that Marvel did the Marvel Max stuff. They started. They didn't put it on the Marvel Max stuff. I'm not sure whether it continued on the regular stuff
Okay,
or not. I
okay, so
don't know. I forget what year that was. I think
yeah,
it
so
was late '90s,
basically,
early thousands.
basically by 2011, 12 years ago, by 2011, just about, I think there may have, even by then, there may have only been two or three left that were still using, but even those companies were really not using it as much. But by 2011, that the CCA had pretty much become no more. The Comics
Yeah.
Code Authority. It was by 2011. I think since that point, if you really think about it, from that point on, that's probably when some of these more, because remember a lot of stuff we're seeing today would not have flown in during the CCA era. People were saying,
Yeah.
yeah, back in the '60s they started chewing away at it a little bit here and there, but really a lot of stuff you're seeing now
Yeah. There was
would not have
good
flown
and
during the
bad things
CCA era.
to it. The
It was by
CCA.
2011 that, and it was probably since then that they really started taking more risks. They started becoming more and more aggressive, and then it was by 2016 that they really, really. It's like, okay, now watch my face here. Watch my face. So this was probably two. Now watch my. Well, here I'm gonna just escape. Let me see. Let me just. I want to enlarge my own here.
Ah.
Okay, now watch my face here. So this is prior to 2011. All right. Okay. 2011, 2016, and then now. Do you kind of get? Do you kind of get what I'm getting at there?
Yeah. The outrageousness it became. It's like,
Yeah,
what
it's
is
like
this?
it went from, so with the Commons Code Authority it was this barely open mouth, and a little bit more in 2011, and in 2016, and then now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I just felt like I needed to.
yeah. Well, it's a question of it's the writers that they're hiring. What would have those writers done back when the Comics Code Authority were on? You know,
Yeah, I mean,
there's no telling. Obviously, it's just a
they would have
hypothetical
probably been
question.
stuck in Independence because that's where a lot of that stuff would have been going. Like it
Yeah,
would have been on the Independent, but
yeah,
been
but
more
they
like
would.
on the.
The problem is the people that they're hiring aren't even qualified. They're qualified maybe to write something, but they're not qualified to write a comic. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. So, anyways,
well, you would hope they would be. Hey, Devil Flyer.
hey, Rex. I know I sent you the link, so if you want to join us in the studio here, um, get in on the conversation here. We've been talking about what they've been doing to the Punisher of late. So if you want to join us in the studio, I know I sent you the link this morning. Just go to your Facebook and you can grab that and join us in the studio
if you
again.
want.
Yeah. Um, so, anyways, and I of course thank you for liking and share. I believe you liked and shared our. Let me check that just to make sure. Yeah, I think you did. So if you haven't, please do, and if you have, thank you. Um, anyways, getting back to this article now, this newer article. Um, the goal is relatively obvious: to erase competing ideals and viewpoints while saturating the market with only one political vision, a woke vision. Yeah, they, it's kind of funny how they call people on the right, you know, Yahtzees, but yet they're the ones who act more like Yahtzees. It's called social engineering, and anyone who claims this is not happening in the U.S. today is gaslighting. Strangely, the American comic book industry has become a major battleground in the culture war, with heroic symbols being increasingly erased or hijacked as vehicles for woke talking points. A vast array of comic book characters are now race swapped, converted to LGBT, or they have had their histories rewritten to make them more, quote, acceptable for modern audiences, unquote. They promote everything from BLM to climate change propaganda to gender identity politics to anti gun messaging. All of this, of course, is true. We've been seeing it for some would argue for the last 5 years, and people would probably say it's been going on even longer than that. But anyways, um, why would leftists target something as frivolous as comic book heroes? Because pop culture is first and foremost a playground where children grow up. And by rewriting heroes as social justice crusaders and communists, they hope to indoctrinate the next generation. And that, something, that's a point I've said many times before. You remember when they were making John Kent and Tim Drake gay,
Yeah,
when those were the big stories? That's exactly what I was saying. And people would ask, well, why don't they just create new characters that they want to push that instead of wrecking old characters? Well, the reason is because it's a lot easier to indoctrinate. If you have this classic legacy character who's well established as a positive person, positive,
yeah,
right? And all of a sudden they're saying, "Hey, look, kids, it's cool to be gay. It's cool to be LGBT. It's cool. It's better to be black than white." If you got these characters that are synonymous with positivity saying this,
yeah,
it makes it a little bit easier to accept than if you just bring in this new character that nobody knows about or cares about. In fact,
yeah,
it's pointed out several times that when they have tried to do that, how those stories have just fallen flat. It's a lot easier to if you can get a mainstream character to if you can hijack a mainstream character to get them to get your point across and make it acceptable, then it becomes a lot easier to indoctrinate the masses. Um, However, one hero figure in particular is seen as so egregious and so triggering that leftists want him memory hold altogether, the Punisher. Yeah, because again, the whole idea is that their thought is the Punisher who is has a military background, utilizes a lot of armaments, a lot of
like I said with the other article, I'm surprised in some ways they just didn't really retcon him and make him like Antifa.
yeah. Yeah. Well, again, the whole idea is they probably blame a character like the Punisher for all the public shootings, for like the school shootings, mall shootings, club
Yeah,
shootings.
but my point is, I would think, you make the Punisher Antifa and he goes after right wing, what he considers right wing nut jobs.
Yeah, yeah. Well, this article is just bleeding full, just somebody just commenting on it. I don't, unlike with what Avi was doing there. Um, the Punisher character, Frank Castle, originally created by Jerry Conway in 1974 with artists Ross Andrew and John Romita, was a product of a chaotic era, a reaction to the rise of war, stagflation, in instability, and exploding crime rates in the U.S. The Punisher story is a tragedy of a returning military veteran whose family is killed during what seems to be a gangland hit. With federal agencies doing little to arrest perpetrators, Castle takes matters into his own hands and begins systematically assassinating the criminals. So there you go. That's who the Punisher is, right there.
Yeah.
That's punishing the criminals, not innocents, not little kids, you know, but criminals. That's who he's going after. He's going after the bad guys. You know, um, the concept of citizen crime stopping and vigilantism was becoming popular in the cultural zeitgeist in the 70s, with many people living in metropolitan areas dealing with increasing criminal violence and unreliable government protection. City governments in places like New York were actively restricting gun rights for law-abiding people, which only
And they
made
still do.
uh-huh, which only made things easier for criminals. Yeah, again, we talk about anytime you get into the whole gun control or gun control, debate. That's the thing. Yeah, you can try to take away people's guns, but the only ones you're taking them away from are from actual law-abiding citizens who would be properly using them. Criminals are not, criminals don't follow the current gun laws. You think that just because you say that we're going to take more guns away, criminals are just going to come in and hand you their gun?
No. Well, heck, it's like
All you're doing is criminalizing the populace, the
yeah.
population. That's the only thing
The
you're doing.
Punisher, Frank Castle, has been, I think, arrested a few times, and they've taken his guns away. He gets them back, but not legally.
Mhm. So the same exact conditions are returning to the U.S. today, and debate is boiling once again on vigilantes. Just look at the media furor over Kyle Rittenhouse or Daniel Penny. Now, of course, we know Rittenhouse. That story's been going on the last couple of years. Daniel Perry, I think, is more recent. I think Daniel Perry
Penny.
I think he was an ex-military guy
Yeah, I
who,
don't know. That name isn't familiar to me. The Rittenhouse one is, of course.
yeah, Daniel Penny is pretty recent. Apparently, he shot up some criminals on a New York subway, and the left has been all over him on that, while the right's been praising him because he basically ended up saving people in that. So, the mainstream left is adamantly opposed to any form of civilian intervention, unless, of course, in parentheses here, unless it's Antifa or BLM, while also being adamantly opposed to any intervention by police. What we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Right? Well, again, and as I mentioned earlier, with them just continually trying to restrict what the police can do to not only protect themselves but others, by taking away even the restraining holds they would use in certain situations. In other words, they want to let criminals run wild and then threaten to prosecute anyone who dares to do anything about it. You know, which is why Antifa, BLM, and anybody who thinks like them deserves to be arrested and locked in an insane asylum, put into a straitjacket, put into a rubber room to be allowed to butt their heads into a rubber wall for the rest of their life.
Well, I might not say that, depending on the person, but they need to deserve a lesson that you just can't go and do this stuff and attack, innocent civilians for no reason.
The Punisher, as an icon, has been highly popular among conservatives, military veterans, and law enforcement officers in recent years. The trademark skull symbol can be found everywhere with patches, gear, and flags sporting the image. Of course, the pirate flag has a skull and crossbones, as I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier.
You know what? What they could do about that is the easy thing, you know? Well, for the most part. Although I'm not sure what they could only do so much. Marvel could not sell the Punisher shirt. Yeah, sure, you and me could make something similar and sell it at that point or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Because a skull as something on a thing is not trademarked, I don't think, or copyrighted.
I
You know
don't
what I
think
mean?
we can be. Yeah.
Maybe the way that they do it specifically for the Punisher could, but
Mhm.
in general,
Well, I mean, if that was the case, then Stone Cold couldn't still. You know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is?
yeah, I know the name.
Yeah, he's a professional wrestler. He had the flaming skull on his shirt. He couldn't use
Yeah.
that if that was the case. You know, uh, the symbol was also okay. Hold on, I skipped over. Let's see. Often as a representation of
Well,
citizens.
sorry, but it does say the trademark skull can be found. So that the one that Marvel's done is trademarked.
Okay. Well, somebody say that in the.
Yeah, it says
Oh, did you find that
well,
information?
right here, it was in the second line of what you read, the trademark skull.
Oh.
Military veterans and law enforcement officers in
Oh,
recent.
okay, yeah, you're right. Okay. Often as a representation of citizens taking matters into their own hands. The symbol was also seen at the January 6th protest.
Yeah, probably just because people were wearing it because they like the shirt.
Now, I know the left likes to call January 6th an insurrection. First off, it wasn't an insurrection, it was a riot. And two,
It might not even have been a riot, but
well, because the difference between a riot and an insurrection, riot is meant more to disrupt. Insurrection is really meant more to take over. They
yeah,
weren't trying to do enough to take over. They were doing more to just disrupt. You know,
yeah, but they just walked through peacefully. Guards let them go places. You know,
and that in of itself is interesting because you had, of course, the left controlling Congress. They may have allowed them to do that for the sole purpose of trying to turn it around on them.
yeah. So all these people walking through peacefully, not yeah, I think there was a couple people that broke something, Okay, so you have a couple people, but 99% of the crowd was peaceful. They just walked through, they looked, they went into where they probably normally wouldn't be allowed, and then they
Well, I
left.
think the Punisher plays on something that's in all of us, where
Yeah.
where I think we feel that when everything when everything's said and done, nothing's being done. You have to take matters in your own hands, and that's I think what the Punisher really plays on there is that feeling that we all I think have had at some point in our life. You
Yeah,
know,
just taking matters into your own hands. Sometimes it's a
right,
wise idea, sometimes it's not.
right. Anyways,
Anyways,
this has made leftists at Marvel Comics livid. They first attempted to make fundamental changes to the character, including a redesign of his popular skull symbol, as well as taking away his guns and giving him swords in 2021. Instead of fighting against criminal organizations, Frank Castle joins with one violating his fundamental code of ethics.
I said that earlier.
This month, though, Marvel officially declared the Punisher persona non grata, eliminating the character as readers know him. Did he go out in a blaze of glory? No. In typical woke fashion, Frank Castle is captured by progressive heroes, chained up and forced to go through a struggle session in which he is admonished as a murderer and a. Oh, God. Yeah.
Murderer! I can't deny that one.
He murdered bad guys, though.
Terrorist!
But, well, okay. The way that the dude said that, though, is what,
Yeah.
I mean, the way that he said that sounds even more grotesque than what's being said, because it almost sounds like they stripped him down, tied him to a fetish horse, and did God
Yeah.
knows what.
Unspeakable things to him.
Yeah. So,
Anyways, Marvel even.
yeah, Marvel even brings the Punisher's wife back from the dead, only so that she can divorce him and take his money and property, and then inform him that his lifelong crusade against criminal underworld was all for nothing.
Okay, no, it wasn't all for nothing because a lot of people survived, And two, what property does Frank Castle own?
Yeah. The character then dies, in quotes, from apparent suicide by the story, but the story is left open to his return, just not as the gun-toting hero people know and love.
Yeah. And
Marvel. Oh, go
I was
ahead.
just gonna say, can we go back up to the picture there for a sec? That's that no, down. I want to see the symbol. I'm on his chest, down right there. And that looks not too bad, but it's nowhere near as intimidating as the original skull. And that's sort of what Frank Castle was about. That symbol was supposed to be intimidation.
Well,
Just seeing it.
you remember the classic line from Batman, right? Criminals who Frank Castle was targeting are a superstitious and, can you finish the statement?
Fearful lot or something to that
Cowardly lot.
Yeah.
Criminals are a superstitious and cowardly lot, as told to Bruce by his father, Thomas
Yeah.
Wayne.
Now, I don't know whether I'd say they're superstitious, but they definitely can be cowardly. You can
Yeah.
strike fear into them because they're always looking over their shoulder. Did you read the little paragraph
Yeah,
under
I
the
did. I did just, and then you told me to go back up.
Okay.
Marvel writers, including original Punisher creator Jerry Conway, specifically cite the popularity of the character among conservatives as a reason for his virtual elimination. Yeah, because now he's become an embodiment of everything that they believe is wrong with conservatives. As Newsweek noted, the Punisher was "quote unquote" problematic for Marvel because conservatives liked him too much. He represents the everyman. He has no superpowers. He's not a billionaire like Batman, but he still fights evil with an immovable will and a lot of guns. Basically, the idea that anybody, including you and me, Rick,
Yeah.
could, if we wanted to, if we were driven enough, could go out and fight crime. We just get our fair share of armament and just do it.
Yeah. And you know what? You probably know this, but there are people that dress up and go out and do that
Mm-hmm. Yep.
in real life.
Yep. Yeah. So the co-option and erasure of popular heroes or anti-heroes is representative of the disturbing politicization of our times. Much like the Cultural Revolution in China, leftist movements in America are systematically tearing down all opposing beliefs from our cultural catalog. And this includes any positive representations of vigilantism. They openly admit why they are doing it. Conservatives aren't allowed to be the good guys. They aren't allowed to have heroes, meaning if the Punisher was a leftist icon, which is something you kind of alluded to, Marvel would have no problem with him. And that last sentence right there is something you alluded to, Rick,
Yeah,
twice when you were talking about, well, if they made him like Antifa or BLM, then they'd be all for it. You know, but
yeah.
but
And
I
I'm
guess he's
surprised
just
in some
so
ways they
egregious.
don't do that just so, yeah, you and me would hate it, but everybody else, would
And I'm
the
sure, and
leftists
I'm
would
sure
love it.
the,
But
the
they wouldn't buy the book, of
comic,
course.
and I'm sure the comic sales would tank faster than you can say Mississippi.
Faster than you could be, say, Punisher.
Yeah. So, anyways, we're at an hour 50 now, so I think it's a good time to start wrapping up. But yeah, I mean, and again, it's been talked about for the last few months here how basically, the left is just trying to just totally emasculate um, Frank Castle because because he's everything that to them what the right represents. People basically being able to do for themselves, defend for themselves, not rely on their government. You know, people can take guns and fend for themselves instead of relying on the government. You know,
Yeah.
you know. So with that, we're gonna start to wrap up here. So of course today there's the weekend of June 10th and 11th, 2023. So why don't we take a look back at this weekend in Nietzsche history? History.
History.
Yeah. So let me just remind myself of a few things here. Okay. 2008, 1933. All right. All right. So, and any further ado, let's go ahead. So, going back on yesterday's date, 15 years ago yesterday, will be our first piece of niche history. All Japan Pro Wrestling's Muda Festival took place 15 years ago yesterday from Korakuen Hall. On it was taped, but it was broadcast on Gaura TV. The main event saw the F1 Tag Team Champions Kamazuki and Keiji Muto, who I believe the Muto festival is named after, defeating Akebono and Hanazawa. Now, Keiji Muto, for those of you who may not know or remember, he was known as a Great Muta here in the States. So for those of you who saw him, in the mid to late 80s as part of Championship Wrestling Florida or in Jim Crockett Promotions in the late 80s, early 90s, that's who Keiji Muto is. He's a Great Muta. So that's the main event. Also saw in a 3-on-1 handicap elimination match, Suwama defeated Manabu Shoya, Seiya Sanada, and T28. The three-way dance, Kai defeated Kaz Hayashi, obviously from WCW fame, and Ryuji Hijikata. In a six-man tag match, the Osamus, Samu Kido, Osamu Matsuada, and Osamu Nishimura defeated the team known as Tokyo Garantai of Mazada, Nosawa Rongai, and Takemura. And in the opening match, Masanobu Fuchi and Nobu Kazuhirai wrestled in a tag team match, defeating Johnny Dunn and Kikubo no Taro, or known also as Kiku Taro. So there you go. So that happened 15 years ago yesterday, the Muto Festival from All Japan Wrestling. Keiji Muto, of course, was I think the president at that time as well. So of All Japan. So, anyways, now moving on to today, this day in each history for today. First off, we head back to 1933, 90 years ago today. As on this,
That's a long time, Shani. 90 years.
yeah, on this date, 90 years ago, Terry Toons, which was, of course, the company that gave us Mighty Mouse, would release in theaters the animated short King Zilch. Unfortunately, they don't really have a summary for this, but on this date, 90 years ago today, Terry Toons' King Zilch was
I
released.
guess that king wasn't very rich because he had zilch.
Yeah. Well, don't know because I haven't seen the feature myself either. But anyway,
I'm joking a little bit because the word zilch means
yeah,
nothing,
it
right?
means zero. Yeah, I know. All right, so
King zero,
yeah,
king
2003.
nothing.
Where's your crown, King Nothing? And that's all
He's
I'm
the
going to
king
say in
of
that.
nothing. King nothing.
Yeah. Well, King Nothing was actually a song by Metallica, so that's why I'm only saying that one part there. But anyway, so all right. On this date in 2003, 20 years ago today, the 10th issue of TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, from Mirage Comics went on sale on this date back in 2003. So now a number of different publishing companies, of course, have done the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles series. On this date was Mirage Comics, the 10th issue of their series, that went on sale on this date. Sold for $3.95 at that time and was 56 pages.
Yes. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtles in a half shell. Turtle power.
Mm-hmm. And finally, on this date, 15 years ago today, on this date, 15 years ago today, the Arms anime, the third season of the Iki Tozen anime series, Great Guardians, premiered on this date back in 2008, 15 years ago today.
Oh, very interesting.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I thank everybody for being here. I hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. We went through a couple of interesting articles, as it were. So I guess we're gonna close out here. Rick, any last things you want to say? Last thing you want to share or anything like that before head out?
No. Just if you're not subscribed to me, go subscribe. Cross Comics here on YouTube. Want to get that audience up to 1,000. We're almost at 800. We're just over 25 away from the 800 mark. So that's good.
And I'm about eight subscribers away from 200. So I've still got a long way to go before I catch up to you. But anyways, all right. Well, that's it for tonight, guys. Don't forget, we'll be back here tomorrow night for the nightly Niche newscast. This Friday, of course, I'll have Rex from Devil Flyer Momentum on with me to finish our coverage of October 1939, our historical comic retrospect. We'll be going over Comics on Parade, Volume 1, Issue 15. Going through some of the characters there. Much like last week, there'll be a lot of reprints, so, we'll be getting through a lot of stories there. So with that, I thank everybody for being here, and I hope to see everybody back here tomorrow. Bye.
Tomorrow. Bye-bye.